Hi, I'm Joe Carrero. Folks, we need a new beginning. The status quo is not acceptable. Every day things are getting worse. And what we need to occupy is the conscience of America to bring us all together in a departure from the course our country's on. And unless we have a common achievable goal, we're wasting our time. But before I get to the immediate goal, let me explain the way I see this current situation now. Well, for the most of the country, it's been a lot easier to go along and get along than it is to think and change things. We should at least appreciate the effort given by those who participate in the Occupy movement and those who preceded them in the Tea Party. But still, the injustice, greed, and corruption and disregard for the welfare of our country continues. And the anger, frustration, and impatience exhibited by those who truly seek reform and change are used to convince most of the population that these protesters are misguided in their efforts, no matter which group they belong to, because the powers that be need to divide us, to conquer their objectives, while we keep falling behind. So now we have Occupy Wall Street being portrayed as some kind of anti-Tea Party. And there are differences, mostly concerning priorities and demographics, but the similarities are much more substantial. Both are popular revolts against powerful forces responsible for America's economic failures. Neither group was defined by a recognizable leader, but rather by unique viewpoints without specific goals. The Tea Party, at least, generalized about less spending and a balanced budget, and over time founded a political movement to promote that viewpoint. But Occupy Wall Street is new and angry, but with little direction as to what to do, as the media and political types bombard the rest of us with empty rhetoric that attempts to persuade us the worst about those who dissent. Each side now points to the other's lunatic fringe as their main body of members. While to be fair and honest, we should focus less on the individual lunatics and those who try to have their unrelated causes represented, and pay more attention to what a movement is really about. Occupy Wall Street is about frustration and a reaction to the increasing power and influence of financial groups and large corporations and their control over a government that cares more for the powerful than it does for the average citizens who are underemployed and further in debt. While the Tea Party is a reaction to big government's overspending and special deals for those in power while not listening to the needs of average citizens. The Tea Party is against a big government which increases spending and bails out large corporations. Occupy is against large corporations which are able to gain advantage by influencing big government. Sounds like similar interests to me. Don't forget the stimulus plans, bailouts, subsidies, tax breaks, and all those special rights and privileges that the government uses to protect and enhance corporate interests, which are as anti-free market as the high taxes and excessive bureaucracy that the Tea Parties oppose. It seems these two groups, Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party, exist to rage against the same injustices and corruption over a system of government and economics. And if they were ever allowed to join together in a common cause, changes would definitely be forthcoming. Hasn't the greatest obstacle to a true representative government to both these groups been big government and big business feeding each other to increase their largesse as they become further removed from the people they were created to serve, while they prod us to find fault with anyone who opposes their joint profit? That's the way government special interests and big business want it. A divided country can't fight back against the organizations that are infiltrating and misdirecting these citizens' groups. You have the Republican Party attempting to co-opt the Tea Party as it limits itself to running its candidates for office in just Republican primaries. And the former director of New York, Acorn, and his top aides are now busy working at Occupy protest events, along with unions and ultra-liberal rich and the Democrat Party who pretend to care, but rather serve the same interests that got us in this mess. Don't forget, these Democrat and Republican parties are big business themselves. They feed and grow and influence off corporate-type interests, be they unions or mega industries. They're all part of the same corporate ruling system, and they know how to infiltrate and trick our citizens into believing that dissent is the enemy on both sides of the political spectrum. These folks are masters at creating illusions. I taught marketing in graduate school, and trust me, they know how to trick the public. That's how they sell you products you don't need and convince you that any of their unethical business practices are primarily in place to help mankind. Just look at the ads on TV featuring average people who in reality can't pay their bills because of the high cost of energy, who are now telling us that doing away with tax breaks on oil companies will harm our country. And ads produced by unions representing government workers depicting what an essential job they are doing as their numbers and pensions have doubled while unemployment has increased in the private sector. But as long as the Republican Party is supported by big business and the Democrat Party is supported by unions, our partisan elected government will never be able to make decisions supporting the average citizen of our country. And those in power continue to act in their own interest and thumb their noses at those who are fed up with such actions. It's because that 1% we hear about so much has the resources to control elections. Because of their money, and they have an enormous base of vote of government, corporates, and union workers who will vote their interests, while the rest of us end up voting for whoever spends the most money. So that's why those in power can dismiss criticisms leveled against them by a majority of citizens on all sides of the political spectrum who are struggling to pay their bills. Because they know from past elections that no one's going to do anything about it, and their futures are secure. So more people become unemployed, more small businesses fail, more students leave school, more debt is accumulated, and more of us lose hope because we see no chance of success. And yet those in power make sure their supporters even benefit when they fail. This year, each Goldman Sachs worker will make an average of $300,000, even as that bank reported a 75% plunge in profits. So maybe it's not so much giving these corporations more money through tax breaks and bailouts so that they can create new jobs, as we are told, as it is giving them more money so that they can pay off incompetence and failure. And after the infusion of all that government money into the financial institutions, in 2010, Wall Street paid its employees $21 billion in bonuses. That's an average bonus of $130,000 per employee. And while the private sector has grown 1%, government grew 15%, with the number of federal employees doubling in the last few years, with an average compensation of $120,000. So you know that no one in government or banking or finance or unions or government-supported corporations will ever vote to limit spending growth or reform the system. And the education that has always been provided a hope for our future will soon cost $20,000 a year, with no jobs in sight after graduation. But you don't see education reform on anyone's radar either. It's understandable for people to be seething right now. In the past 10 years, median U.S. household income has shrunk by over 10%. Over the past 30 years, the income of the top 1% increased by 275%, while those with incomes in the lower 20% only increased theirs by 18%. But don't be fooled into talking about the class warfare that divides us. The solution to our problems is not about redistribution of wealth. That will not solve our problem. We need to figure out how this greed and corruption has been allowed and fix it and make it fair. If redistribution becomes our focus, the system will stay the same, and eventually there will be less wealth to redistribute. And it's not about the free market or capitalism. In my lifetime, there hasn't been a free market in money. Our central bank reserve system is really government fixing the price of money by an unelected board of governors at the Federal Reserve. There's not even a free market in housing, since the federal government controls almost 90% of new mortgages. Trust me, it's not the corrupt and powerful, it is the corrupt and powerful people, not systems of government or economics, who are at fault. Greedy individuals are destroying our economic system. Capitalism is what made our country great. It's the unpatriotic attitude of many of these Wall Street corporate union types and their influence on a corrupt Congress that has brought our country to its economic needs. These people need to be held accountable. And it's obvious it's us against them. They are the enemy of our future. These Occupy and Tea Party folks need to understand that this is a problem that's been placed at the feet of politicians who are either crooked or stupid and need a political solution. It's those we elected to represent us that have sold us out to their allegiances to their parties and benefactors rather than to adhere to the consent of the governed. That's us. The way to solve our country's problems is to take back our governing bodies. That's the redistribution that needs to be accomplished. We need to change the way we elect those who are trusted with our representation, and it can no longer involve the political parties. We must spread throughout the country and register people as independents who understand the importance and clout of the vote. The powers that be are hoping that time will dilute the enthusiasm of the Occupy movement and temper the resolve of the Tea Party so that the status quo can be continued. But if we can register independents, we can take back our country. It's estimated that 30% of the registered voters in the United States are currently independents. If we can up that percentage to between 40 to 50%, we'll be able to elect independent candidates that will have allegiance to us rather than political parties. And rather than having the Occupy movement and the Tea Party only be seen on the news when controversy occurs, they can then be seen throughout the communities of our country at post offices, grocery stores, university campuses, and even banks, registering people who want to see our system of government and economics reformed. It's the only way to change the direction that the coalition of big government, big business, and big political parties are taking us. To think we have average Joes and Janes willing to fight for our country's survival by working tirelessly to get a few people elected to office who will stand up for what's right, and then others spending nights in the cold of winter in a park to show the urgency of reform. We are in the midst of a revolution not dissimilar from the reasons our country was first founded. We just need to unite our cause and become independent of the politics that presently control us. Thanks for all you've done to awaken America. Now let's all do something about it. And please watch my issue videos on theaveragejoe.us. And thanks for listening to An Average Joe.